Welcome and thanks for joining us. We're glad to have your participation in the first video conference conducted by the Texas Agricultural Extension Service exclusively for public school personnel. At issue is how to develop an integrated pest management or IPM program for your schools and to comply with the State Structural Pest Control Act. I'm Suzanne Hayden and I'll be your host here at Texas A&M University. In just a minute, we'll review the program agenda. But first, some opening remarks from Representative John Hershey of Wichita Falls and Mr. Jerry Gideon, Assistant Director for Administrative Services at the Texas Association of School Administrators. As you will hear, both Representative Hershey and Mr. Gideon have personal experience related to IPM.
Hi, I'm John Hershey, and I wrote the bill which will lower the chances of Texas kids being exposed to harmful chemicals in their schools. Since we trust schools with our greatest asset, our children, we need to be sure the school environment is as safe as possible. Without some guidelines, pesticides can cause expensive problems for schools, as well as seriously affect the health of kids. As an example, a few years ago, school board members and volunteers sprayed lindane and toxaphene to kill head lice in a Texas school. These pesticides were only authorized for use on cattle. The school had to be closed down for 4 weeks while the students suffered rashes, headaches, nausea, and runny eyes. An official at the Poison Control Center compared using these chemicals for children's lice to bird hunting with an elephant gun. While I don't have the figures on the amount of money spent to clean and reopen this school, I bet it was far more expensive than a training course would be for non-commercial applicators of pesticides. Based on concern for the health of our children, the legislature passed a bill to control pesticide use in public schools. This will now ensure that school districts look for all possible methods to reduce the chances of chemical exposure to our school children. The program is called Integrated Pest Management, or IPM. Overexposure to many chemicals has been linked to learning disabilities, memory loss, and behavioral problems. The dangers of some chemicals, combined with children's high metabolism and tendency to play on the floor and other areas where pesticides are applied, greatly increases their chances of suffering ill effects. If an IPM program is implemented correctly, school districts will be aware of the safest methods for pest control, and Texas school children's exposure to potentially dangerous chemicals will be minimized. Thank you for taking the time to watch this, and I hope this program is helpful to you.
School administrators welcome efforts to maximize school safety and minimize health risks to students and faculty. I personally worked 32 years in public education, and I served the last 27 years as a school superintendent in the Northeast Texas area. For the past 2 years, I have worked with the Texas Association of School Administrators, providing workshops throughout our state to train school personnel in various grounds and facilities maintenance, including pest control. TASA has made an exerted effort to inform school districts and education service centers about changes in the pesticide management program. Our organization is providing pesticide training workshops this year all over the state. These workshops are designed to assist school district personnel prepare for the licensing exams. For many years, pesticide management was regulated by the Texas Department of Agriculture. Today, all regulations, including pesticide licensing, are administered by the Texas Structural Pest Control Board. As school districts begin integrated pest management programs, we are not only complying with the law, it's the best way to avoid risk to human health and maintain the trust of the school community. And I am confident that Texas school administrators will enthusiastically support integrated pest management because the welfare, health, and safety of children always been one of our prioritized objectives.
To help you achieve your objectives for integrated pest management, we have a number of topics to cover. In the first half of the program, as you see on the agenda, We have presentations to specifically explain the IPM law, what IPM is, and how pesticides fit in. After a short break, we'll discuss the components of a model IPM school program and other issues most relevant to school administrators. Administrators are the primary target audience for this program, which emphasizes the regulatory and school policy issues related to IPM. We'll conduct another 2-hour video conference on April 5th to discuss in depth the actual practice of IPM by IPM coordinators, pesticide applicators, and other school staff. They too will benefit from today's program. As you listen to our presenters, be sure to make a note of your questions so you can call in during our question and answer sessions. That number is 1-800-326-1149. Or you may fax your questions to 409-845-1643. The Extension Service is a leading authority in IPM research and education, but we're not a regulatory agency. In Texas, that authority is the State Structural Pest Control Board. Joining us now is Mr. Benny Mathis, Executive Director of the SBCB, to give us an overview of IPM regulations. Benny?
Thank you, Suzanne. One of the first things I'd like to start out with is give you a basic background of the Structural Pest Control Board. The Structural Pest Control Board was established in 1971 by the Texas legislature to be able to come up with rules and regulations dealing with a commercial applicator. Well, over the years, we were given extra authority by the state legislature, which included, in 1991, integrated pest management for school systems, along with commercial and non-commercial licensing of the employees at the schools. One of the main things that was developed in this process was to come up with the manuals, to come up with the information that would be needed at the school systems. There's some current and proposed legislation in Texas, Louisiana, and many other states at this time that deals with integrated pest management in those school areas. In Texas, we came up with a committee. The committee was looking at all of the elements and strategies of integrated pest management. At the same time, EPA was doing this same process. They came up with a manual, Integrated Pest Management for Schools. They started working this process in 1990. It so happened that our committee that was working here in Texas came along with about the basic same information as EPA did. So we were able to take this document that came from EPA and adopt most of the standards in it with some changes for Texas. We will be mailing this document out to all the school systems, school administrators, and board members sometime in the next 60 days. Main changes on it would be that instead of having EPA here, it will have Texas. It'll also have all the Texas regulations incorporated into the manual. The state regulatory role is to establish the integrated pest management as a priority. This needs to be done by September 1st of 1995. And our responsibility is to be prepared to help, to talk to those people when the phone rings, to give information to the participants at the schools on integrated pest management and the responsibilities as the agency that would enforce this. We have increased our inspector training. Our inspectors that go out and do enforcement for us and also investigate complaints have been trained in the integrated pest management process. We have stepped up our enforcement on complaints. In the last few months, we've had several complaints dealing with schools because of the legislative change in 1991 that gave some very specific requirements of record keeping, public notification, which is 48 hours prior to the application of those pesticides. No applications during school hours for at least 12 hours would be the reentry levels. The least toxic methods are encouraged in an integrated pest management plan. We would want to use the least toxic products. And our green list products that I'll speak about a little bit later all fall in these lines. There may be, in the future months, specific product bans. We want to make sure that the judicious use of pesticides is what is the alternative now, but it becomes the factor that we would make sure we use in the future. Everyone's going to have a role in this. Education, communication, teachers, students, maintenance people, administration personnel, and teachers is going to be very important. The manual that we have developed speaks to that in several locations. We want to prevent those insects, to prevent those problems by proper maintenance, observation of pest activities, and many other components of integrated pest management. The pest management policy at each school would take in consideration the strategies of a good integrated pest management program. Proper identification of those insects and the type of treatment is very important. Monitoring. Monitoring is to be able to tell what type of insects are there and when to treat for them. Use non-chemical management wherever possible, such as caulking and exclusion of those pests. Also using the least toxic chemical controls when possible. We do need to have that each school district have an integrated pest management policy on file at the school district by September 1st of 1995. The integrated pest management coordinator would be working along these same lines to make sure that they would have this policy. The integrated pest management coordinator has a tremendous amount of responsibility in this. Each school district can have one or more integrated pest management coordinators. They would have to attend an integrated pest management training course within 12 months of becoming the coordinator. They would coordinate the list of all integrated pest management needs and complaints by the participants at the school or the occupants. They'd also work hand in hand with the commercial pest control operator if they were doing areas at the school that the maintenance people were not. The bid specifications, changing the way we think about applications of pesticides is going to be very important. This is going to be one of the major things that the administrator will have to take into consideration. That we change our bid specifications, that we have them based on the integrated pest management strategies and not just the application of pesticides. We want to make sure that the specifications are compatible and that there's compliance with the integrated pest management strategies and all of the district's IPM policies, and to use the products that are approved for the school use by the list that the board has came up with. Also, the IPM coordinator and the commercial or non-commercial applicator will have to recognize when emergency treatments need to be done and keep records of those pesticide applications, requests for applications, and complaints of applications. They would also need to have the pesticide labels and make sure that the 48-hour notice is posted along with the 12-hour reentry. I guess the main thing to sum up for the integrated pest management coordinator responsibilities is they're going to be the information contact at the school system. They may or may not have to be the person that would be in charge of maintenance, but it would have to be someone that would be able to compile that information. It could be more than one person. Now, the employed or contracted certified applicator will have other duties also. The approval of the yellow and green list products and making sure that the justification of those products are there. We have developed a form that is in the manual that we'll be sending for being able to determine the red list products. The approval process is going to be very important. The green list products can be used without an approval. These would be the EPA category 3 and 4 pesticides. Some of these carry a caution label. The ones that would be able to be used without prior approval would be the inorganics, the boric acids, the silica gels, insect growth regulators, baits and traps, and those type of products. Now, the yellow list products would be the EPA category 2 and 3 pesticides. These also carry a caution label. They would have to have written approval by the certified applicator and could only be used for 3 months or 3 applications in each area. The red list products would be EPA 1 and 2 pesticides. These include restricted use pesticides, state limited use pesticides, and the labels, warning on the labels. The red list products would have to have notice sent to the agency that the red list products are being used. We've developed a form that we will be using in this manner so that you can fill out the form and direct it to the agency. We will be able to keep up with these in a manner that would be consistent with using those products. That just about covers the approval process of the list, the IPM coordinator's responsibilities, and the current proposed regulations. But I'd like to end with the fact that the Integrated Pest Management Coordinator is going to be a key factor in this. Someone with the administration of the schools that can help direct the integrated pest management plans for all the school districts. Thank you, Suzanne.
Thanks, Benny. What are some of the common questions that you've gotten about the regulations?
Well, some of the common questions is when do we actually start the process? Well, the process should be started today in developing an integrated pest management policy for each school district and also the approval list for the products. There's going to be many phase-in. To be able to do this, we're going to have to phase in many different things. We can't expect that the exclusion, the caulking, and all that would be done in the first few weeks. So there'll be a phase-in process for this.
Mm-hmm. Has there been some confusion about the distinction between an IPM coordinator and a pesticide applicator?
Yes, there has, and the regulations speak to the Integrated Pest Management Coordinator can be, or shall be, could be a non-commercial applicator as long as they're an employee of the school. The contracted certified applicator or the commercial applicator could not be the Integrated Pest Management Coordinator, but they're going to work hand in hand with that Integrated Pest Management Coordinator to be able to get the Integrated Pest Management started and working successfully at each school.
Well, thank you, Benny. We do have the address and phone to show for the structural board in the event that people have any more questions. And of course, you'll be back with us a little bit later in the program to take a call-in session. Many of the questions that you have for Mr. Mathis may be answered in the course of this program. However, Benny will be back for at least a 10-minute call-in session to respond to any unanswered questions about IPM regulations. And of course, you can call and write the structural board. Until now, IPM may have been an unknown term to some of you, but it's been a well-known concept in agriculture. We want to tell you a little bit about the roots of integrated pest management and the impact it's had in other areas. Here to do that is Dr. Ray Frisbee, head of the Texas A&M Department of Entomology. Ray, thanks.
Thank you, Suzanne. It's really a pleasure to be here on behalf of the Department of Entomology, and I'm really excited about participating in the new infusion of this technology into our public school system. As you suggested earlier, IPM does have its roots in agriculture. There have been problems in dealing with over-reliance on pesticides, particularly insecticides, throughout the history of agriculture, principally in the late 1950s and 1960s. Insects have become resistant to certain insecticides. There were environmental concerns, there were profitability concerns, a multitude of concerns that caused this technology to develop in the research phase and eventually be implemented in agriculture. Fortunately, it's not an exclusively agricultural technology. There are many applications to urban settings and particularly to public schools. So we're very happy that within the Department of Entomology, our research and extension capability, that we're expanding and nurturing urban entomology technology, particularly relative to IPM. Now, the definition of IPM is a very simple and straightforward definition. It's basically a pest population management system, and what we want to do is stress the systems part that anticipates and prevents pests from causing damage. IPM is an ecological approach in that it considers the impact on human health and safety and our environment. IPM is comprised of several components within this system. As Mr. Mathis indicated, pest identification is extremely important. The knowledge of the biology of the pest, its location, its habits, all form the basis of understanding of how you manage the pest. Once this is done, monitoring must be done on a regular basis. Not all pests in all numbers cause damage either to crops or pose human health problems. There are levels in which we can tolerate these pests. A major area of integrated pest management is the use of natural enemies. We commonly refer to this as the area of biological control. Biological control, or the use of natural enemies, involves parasites, which frequently we can't even see. They're small, tiny wasps who make their living feeding and surviving on pest species, very specific. Predators, most of us are more familiar with predators, and we think of the classic lady beetle or the lacewing or the praying mantis that we see in our gardens and landscapes. And finally, insects have their own hosts of diseases called insect pathogens, that some of these pathogens have actually been commercialized into very safe pesticides for use in the home, in schools, and on landscape. Pest-resistant plants, most of us are not familiar with. These are plants that either naturally tolerate higher levels of pests without showing damage, or have been genetically manipulated through varietal breeding programs to withstand insect, disease, and other pest problems. Finally, an aspect that many of us take almost for granted because we do it so regularly are what we call cultural and structural controls. This involves planting a variety that is resistant, when you plant it, how you fertilize it, how you rotate it with other plants in the landscape or on an agricultural commodity. Structural changes, as we've talked about earlier, involve principally sanitation. Sanitation in removing food sources or harborage for agricultural pests are very important, and for structural pests are extremely important. That gives us kind of an overview of the IPM system. The last, and probably one of the most important parts, is after we have designed this system to prevent or exclude pests, the judicious use of least toxic chemicals is recommended. Sometimes we simply cannot design a system that will allow us not to use some amount of pesticides, but we want to use it in a very discreet and directed way. To summarize this activity, the intent of IPM is basically viewed as a pyramid. The bottom part are the biological approaches, the cultural, the sanitation, generally the non-chemical alternatives. And finally, as a last resort, we would want to go to a least toxic pesticide. To provide you with an example, kind of a summary of what we've been talking about in IPM, we, over the last several years, have developed a carrot IPM program in the lower Rio Grande Valley. This program was developed in cooperation with the Texas Agricultural Extension Service, major food processing companies, and farmers. And we'd like to view this video for you now.
The U.S. food industry views IPM as an economically viable and environmentally rational approach to the management of crop pests. IPM is a pest population management system that anticipates pest problems and prevents pests from reaching damaging levels by using all suitable techniques. These techniques include biological control, cultural management, and the safe and judicious use of pesticides. In an IPM system, biological and cultural control are the first line of defense. Pesticides are used only when careful monitoring indicates that economic damage is occurring. IPM also stresses the safe and careful use of the correct type and amount of pesticide. IPM is particularly important in U.S. food and fiber production because it can increase producer profits while preventing unnecessary pesticide use. IPM is a logical approach to minimizing water pollution and the endangerment of wildlife caused by the indiscriminate use of pesticides. IPM has a track record of success. The Cooperative Extension Service has formed partnerships with farmers and the food industry in developing IPM programs. Carrots are processed for baby foods, soups, and a variety of canned and frozen products. Carrots have very tight tolerances for insect damage. Using insect scouting techniques and action thresholds developed in cooperation with the Texas Agricultural Experiment Station, a 720-acre pilot IPM program was initiated. Farmers under contract with Gerber Foods Incorporated and Campbell Foods Incorporated enrolled in the pilot program. Both companies actively supported the carrot IPM program. After only 1 year, the results of the program were dramatic. While farmers not enrolled in the program made an average of 6 insecticide applications during the season, farmers in the program made an average of only 2 applications. This 66% reduction in the use of insecticides was made without loss in quality or yield. As an additional bonus, farmers enrolled in the IPM program had a total increase in net profits of $21,600. The IPM technology developed in the Carrot program has been passed on to other farmers and private agricultural consultants in South Texas.
As you can see from that example, there's several principles of IPM that have been applied to a carrot production system. They also deal significantly with food safety and environmental concerns. Our goal is to try to minimize insecticide use as much as possible. Another example of a fresh market produce is our cabbage IPM program that was also developed in South Texas, our major cabbage production area. Using similar tactics, we were able to reduce the use of insecticide by 44%, again without the loss in yield and quality. What this is, basically, these two examples are win-win situations where the producers benefit economically from an IPM program, public health is improved, and also the environment is protected. Texas is the largest cotton-producing state in the United States. Historically, it has been. One of our pioneering IPM initiatives began in the mid-70s, carried on into the 80s, and even is carried on today. We were able to apply several of the IPM components that we talked about today in a system across Texas that resulted in nearly a 17 million pound per year reduction in the use of insecticides. We think this is one of the most stable IPM programs in the world, and we're very pleased to have been involved in it in cooperation with our farmers, cotton producers, and the Texas Pest Management Association. IPM programs, as we know, work in agriculture. We also have experienced some pioneering work in public schools within the state of Texas. One of our colleagues, Mr. Don Renchie, has visited with the Austin Independent School System and has discussed with them what approaches they have taken in implementing IPM in a public school.
So when the sign went up for the spraying of an organophosphate here at our school 3 years ago, then I was motivated to see if there weren't some better way, and it turned out that there was. And the problem then resolved simply to how to get that better way up and going at our school.
When it was first brought to my attention, I thought this could never work. We have to spray for ants, we have to spray for roaches, and so forth. But when my community, particularly one of our very involved parents, brought to me a proposal for controlling pests without pesticides and really showed our school how to do it, I'm now a firm believer in it.
As we were carrying our normal pesticide operations, we were frequently questioned about what type of chemicals we are using, who is applying these chemicals, and what are the conditions at the time of application, and whom have we notified. And yes, on occasions we did have some problems where teachers or parents were complaining that some environmental damage might have been done. So we had to respond to all of these concerns of the citizens, and we were more or less guided. It was kind of a logical approach that we started doing those things that are now allowed.
I myself am the designated IPM coordinator, and all actions that take place are coordinated through me. I will not be front line making the on-site decisions, but I will be informed. However, if in the IPM structure of chemical application, where you have the green list, the yellow list, and the red list, when we get into the yellow and red lists, they will have to seek my approval in doing that, in as much as especially on the red list chemicals, will have to go through a specific committee for approval. I will be empowered to make emergency application decisions if there's any problems that affect health and safety of individuals. But that's the nature in which those types of responses will be controlled and decisions be made.
Okay, at the present time, I'm the certified applicator. Have 7 technicians, that's licensed technicians that's working for me. Like I said, they work part-time because they are volunteers because they have other additional jobs during the day. At the present time, we are training another 12 people, grounds people that are real be doing weeds and tree spraying in that category. But a typical day for me would be we get work orders in, and what we do, they'll send them through the mail, and they have a form that we call, "Have you seen this pest?" And the teachers, the principals, custodians, they would take this form. If they see the pest, they'll outline it. But if they don't send that in, they'll send a work order along with a map of the school outlining where the problems are. So when we come in the evenings and on the weekends, it makes it a whole lot simpler for us to go where the pests are. And then when we go there, we can analyze what the problem is, why are they having this pest, and we'll leave a note for them, hey, we've completed this job, that you need to do this. And then we'll get contact later back and we'll call them, talk to them on the phone, and saying, did you get my note, and explain to them why you have this situation. And a lot of times I can contact the building operators, and if we need any exclusions or things like that, they could put up screening or do caulking or things like that. And so everybody's helping one another.
But well, let's just take a look at the situation we had when we first started. We had virtually in every school, in every custodial closet, we had some pesticides that were purchased not through us, that the schools would purchase directly from local vendors. They were roach kills or whatever, sometimes poisons for rats, etc. We did not have centralized control. That centralized control took us a long time to establish. It started with Lance when the emphasis was placed on certain chemicals which the community felt were too hazardous. So we eliminated this. Then the next step was to remove all of the chemicals from the schools. So we did that. It took us almost 3 years to remove all the chemicals from the schools. So right now, we, the service center, are the only ones who dispense chemicals. The Alexander is in charge of the program. You know, everybody who is doing it is educated, and D is licensed. Our costs are rising, and they're rising primarily because, not necessarily because of the cost of the chemicals, but because of the way we're doing things. We do have this group of volunteers that D is supervising. They have other jobs during the week, and on weekends they're working on overtime doing this application. So the cost for that is high because we're paying them time and a half. So when you put all of these things together, I can't say that, yes, we're saving a lot of money. I can say that we're doing a better job. We can see the results. We are not having the problems that we had years ago. So that we know about. We can tell that by the type of work orders we're receiving, the type of compliments or the type of evaluations we have from the schools. These are verbal, and we see it especially in the cafeterias. So yes, we're doing a lot better job.
We hope this morning we've been able to give you the definition of IPM, some of the principles involved in IPM systems, giving you a brief glimpse at their success in agriculture and how they can be successfully used in school systems within Texas. Suzanne, it's been a privilege on behalf of the Department of Entomology to work with you this morning, and I look forward to the rest of the program.
Thanks, Ray, and for that background and those IPM examples. As you've learned, pesticides are used very judiciously and carefully in integrated pest management. They still can be a valuable tool when used properly, with full understanding of their benefits and hazards. To help improve our understanding of pesticides, we're joined now by Dr. Roger Gold, an extension urban entomologist, and Dr. Stuart Shallett, an epidemiologist and director of the Institute of Occupational and Environmental Medicine at the Texas A&M Health Science Center. For now, Roger will start with his comments about the benefits of effective pest control, and then Stuart will continue with the discussion about pesticide risk. Roger?
Well, fine. Thank you again for the opportunity to be on the program. There are many benefits that we derive from being involved in an effective pest management program. Certainly, the role of any integrated pest management program is to provide for the health and the safety of the students, the teachers, and those that are working in and around the schools. We have a list of ideas here in terms of some of those. One of them is to reduce the liabilities associated with pests and other organisms that may occur in the school. Now, when we're talking about integrated pest management programs, they need to be directed towards insects, as Dr. Frisbee has talked about, to mice and other rodents, as well as to weeds. Certainly, we improve the public image that they have of the schools when we're taking care of our pest problems, and it improves the personnel morale of the people who are working in the school areas to know that these areas are pest-free. And obviously, when we're taking care of insects and other pests that could have some possible health impacts, we're improving the public safety. The list actually can be continued because it improves the learning environment in which the students and the teachers are involved. And when we implement IPM programs, it actually does limit exposure to toxic chemicals that would include many of the pesticides and other cleaning agents. The focus should always be on teaching and learning rather than worrying about pest problems in the school situations. There are a number of public health concerns that we need to be aware of with insects and other vermin that are involved with schools. And if we can have the next visual here and talking a little bit about the public health components. We have a number of stinging arthropods in Texas that can cause problems to students. Of course, the fire ant being one, wasp and other stinging insects are others examples. And these must be addressed as part of an IPM program. We also need to be concerned about the control of other human pathogen vectors, such as mosquitoes, ticks, and fleas, and other pests that students and our teachers and workers can bring into the school environment. We also are concerned about the emotional health of the students and the teachers. There are many individuals in the population that actually have fear of insects and others, and this fear can lead to problems such as entomophobia and actually hysteria. And of course, when we're having an effective pest control program, we also can improve the aesthetics of the working environment in which the teachers and the students find themselves for much of their life.
Thank you, Roger. And Stuart, your turn, and then we'll all come back together.
Thank you very much, Suzanne. What I'm going to try to talk about briefly, and there's really just a few minutes now, and I hope you think of some questions because that's one way we can deal with some of the specific concerns you may have. Obviously, one of the things that are brought to bear when pesticides are used in the school are both the concerns of the faculty and the staff of the school as well as that of parents. There's certainly been a lot of talk and media attention to whether pesticides may represent health problems and whether we really need the pesticides. Well, it's clear from the discussion we've had so far, and particularly from Dr. Gold's comments, there are significant problems and significant health risks that are raised by the presence of insects and other pests in schools. And that is one of the reasons why we need to attack these problems and use pesticides. Now, certainly earlier, Mr. Mathis brought up the issue of various different types of lists of pesticides which are available for use in the schools. And I think one of the things that's important is to just have a brief idea of what the different classes of pesticides are, not so much that you're going to become an expert on them or know some of the hundreds and hundreds of names of pesticides, but just so that you can ask the intelligent questions when the decisions are made in terms of what pesticides to use in the school. Organophosphates. Organophosphates are the heavy hitters of pesticides. Some people might think they're sort of the elephant gun and maybe a little bit of an overkill inside a school environment. They have their place when there are significant and severe infestations. However, organophosphates have significant toxicity for humans. And so they're the types of things to avoid, if at all possible. Another class of fairly powerful pesticides are the carbamates. Carbamates are similar in action to organophosphates, but quite a bit less toxic in general. One of the most widely used types of pesticides that come in the last few years are what are known as pyrethrins. Pyrethrins are synthetic derivatives of compounds that were originally extracted from things like chrysanthemums. Pyrethrins very often have very long chemical names on bottles, but one way you can recognize them is their ending tends to be in THRIN, thrin. And that's the key that they're pyrethroids, and they tend to be far safer and have far fewer problems in terms of human toxicity. Now, one of the things that people don't worry about, and maybe aren't even aware of, is the problems that can arise from what are known as carrier vehicles. These are the liquids in which the pesticides are suspended before they're applied. These carriers can be water, and that's probably the best one to choose, but they also can be things like organic solvents. part of the problem is both from the toxicity of the solvents as well as the fact is they usually have very strong odors. And odors are a very important factor in situations where people have had significant complaints about health problems associated with the application of pesticides in structures including schools. Now, the health problems that are seen most commonly are relatively simple ones. Things like headaches, nausea, burning eyes, breathing difficulties, particularly in people with histories of asthma or allergies. Now, the issue with asthma and allergies are not trivial. There are people who have very severe asthma. There are people with severe allergies. And even though the toxicity of the pesticides can be rather minimal, these people may have very severe reactions. And that's one of the reasons why there are reentry criteria that are stated before people can go back to work or children can go to learn in an environment where pesticides have been applied. And that's why currently there's a 12-hour reentry requirement before people can go back in. Now, one of the things where people can go wrong in a school environment is it can be sprayed the previous day, the ventilation's turned off, and no one comes back into the school until the next morning. And while no one's been in there, very often the ventilation can be off, or even if the ventilation's on, it may not be taking in outside fresh air. This is particularly a problem in Texas where the energy costs are significant because of the cost of air conditioning. People try to minimize the amount of outside air that is brought in. But it's important to have fresh air. One of the things that tends to reduce the odors, tends to cut down on complaints that people will have from the odors, is if the area has been allowed to be aired out thoroughly. If windows can be opened, that's the easy way. If the system within the ventilation system can have its dampers open so that fresh air can be brought in, that's another way to deal with this problem. Now, one of the issues that's very important is notification. Notification really is part of avoiding problems before they start when pesticides are applied in a school. That includes, obviously, the notification of students and their parents. They need to know in advance, and this is particularly important if there are students within the school population with severe asthma or allergies. One way to get that information and make sure that it gets to the right people is very often through the school nurse. They may have specific knowledge of children who have respiratory problems, and these are individuals that you need to give some concern to, because if there's going to be any sensitivity to chemicals, these are the individuals that may suffer it. Now, in addition to the parents and the students, the teachers need to know in advance when this is going to happen, and perhaps even need to talk to the students about this really is safe, and they may notice some slight odors. And if they do, it's not really a problem. But they need to know in advance this is going to happen, not be surprised that it occurs. Now, younger children are of particular concern when pesticides are applied, because children very often, particularly kindergarten and first grade, may spend some of their free time in the school on the floor. And when pesticides are applied in nooks and crevices and the corners, children may get around, and let's face it, kids wind up putting their hands in their mouth. Their hands on the floor, their hands in their mouth. So that's why, particularly in the youngest grades, if you can really try to work on sanitation, if the food's not there, the insects aren't going to come there, and using baits and traps so that they're really the most minimally toxic approaches to pest control in those environments. Finally, the types of things where problems can arise very often can be when people bring in their own pesticides. Teachers come in to try to control pests that maybe have gotten into some plants. Or the other way it can come in is sometimes salesmen will come to the individuals in the school who are involved in the pest management and may bring in samples. It's very important in both those cases that the teachers be informed that this is not appropriate, that if there is a problem, they need to talk with the IPM coordinator at the school. And in terms of employees, samples shouldn't be used. Things need to go through a control process so that everyone knows what's being used in the school and where it's being used in the school. And if we follow these guidelines, there really are very few problems. While you may have heard of various studies that find problems with long-term health effects from pesticides, these are issues in the agricultural setting where large quantities of chemicals are used by individuals over 20, 30, 40 years or more. The students in the school, when pesticides are used appropriately, are not at risk for any long-term health problems. These short-term health problems and how to avoid them really are in your hands in making sure that the guidelines and the procedures set forth by the new regulations are followed and the notifications are taken care of. Well, Suzanne, that's the short version. I hope the viewers have been writing down some questions.
Well, we'll find out shortly if they have, because we're ready to hear from you. But in the meantime, you know, we have to be careful about understanding these concerns. But what's the difference, in your opinion, between the perceived versus actual risks of pesticides?
Well, that's a good question. I think there's a lot of attention that goes on because of the media for various problems that have been talked about in terms of pesticides. Most of these problems, as I said, have to do with long-term, high-level exposures. The exposures that we're talking about in the school environment, particularly when we're talking about the green list chemicals, is really non-existent. These are very, very safe compounds that have been carefully tested. The concerns that people have really shouldn't apply to these types of situations. The health problems that really arise are much more to do with the odors, the psychological problems that people have when they perceive foreign and chemical odors in their environment. They get headaches, they get nauseous, and this may not be a physiologic reaction to the chemical, but just to the presence of the odor. It's not the toxicity of the compound, it's the concern that the funny smell may cause. And that's not to suggest that these people aren't really sick and haven't really become nauseous or headaches or may have difficulty working in the school environment when those chemicals are present, but it's got to do with the perception. It's got to do with how they perceive whether there's a health problem.
Roger?
Suzanne, just don't mean to interrupt, but
No, what's your perspective?
we have a graduate student who has just completed a survey within the school system in terms of the actual problems with pesticide exposure and health-related issues. His name was Damon Shadrock. And Damon basically found that in looking at reports that had been received from Texas, from all of the school districts, that the number of actual confirmed cases of poisoning as a result of pesticide use in schools is a very low number. But I think we all can agree that one is too many, and we can do a better job in pest control, and certainly through the use of integrated pest management, we can do that better job. But it's not as though there is a major problem, at least based on the record. The reporting system needs to be improved, certainly. But I think that people need to understand that we don't have a major issue in terms of a lot of children that have been made ill.
What's been the evolution in chemical products and their toxicity today versus recent years?
Well, that's actually a fairly difficult question to answer. Stuart has gone through that we have moved basically from the organophosphates and the chlorinated hydrocarbons up to the new pyrethroids. The toxicity of the pyrethroids, in some cases, is actually much less than the organophosphates. But all pesticides need to be respected, and just because you talk about a certain chemical class, there are differences within a chemical class in terms of the toxicity. So just because you might be using a pyrethroid, do not assume that it's a low toxicity product. You need to look at the label, remembering the caution words on the label are a good indication of the toxicity of that product.
Now, is the 12-hour re-entry interval sufficient for the persistence of most chemical products?
The answer is that pesticides in general will last longer than 12 hours. The concept of the re-entry period or the waiting period is to make sure that all of the surfaces are dry and that all of the particles of the application of the chemical have settled onto surfaces, and that the odor is usually reduced by that time as well. So the persistence hopefully is actually longer than 12 hours because that's where the residual effects that kills the pest in the cracks and crevices actually comes from.
I think one thing to add to that is that while there are very, very almost vanishingly few cases where actual health problems are caused or poisonings are caused, there have been a number of instances in Texas schools when people haven't followed the guidelines or haven't notified people in advance and haven't followed the reentry times where people smell the odors, people start getting sick, and it's sort of a cascade effect. One person gets nauseous and may lose breakfast, and then the next thing you know, it's a cascade effect, and they have to evacuate the school, and the TV cameras are there, and that's where the problem comes in. It's not so much the poisoning episodes, it's these really sort of psychological episodes where people smell chemical odors, and the next thing you know, it's perceived as a major problem. And that's something that you can avoid by really trying to stick by the guidelines.
I think the other issue that needs to be raised is that in a public school, or any school in general, that we have a variety of health issues that need to be addressed. On any given day, there are those individuals that feel well and those that feel sick. There are certain diseases or suggested diseases that we have in Texas and throughout the world now. One of those is multiple chemical sensitivity, where there are individuals within a population that are extremely sensitive to pesticides. And I think that we need to keep the extremes in mind when we're designing our pest control approaches, so that even the most susceptible in the population is in fact protected.
We have had a question faxed in. Will applications within the green list require the need of the 12-hour re-entry time?
The answer is, I think that that has not as yet been resolved, but for right now one should consider that there still will be a re-entry time. But I know that the Structural Pest Control Board itself is looking at that issue presently. In other words, there should be some incentive for using the products on the green list, and that may be one that will be used as an incentive to stay on the green list in the future.
And of course, the context of all of this is the effective pest control and the total IPM program and strategies. Without the effective pest control, what are some of the risks inherent with the pests and the vectors?
You know, that's a good point, Susanna, that I think that you've made. In Texas, we have a number of stinging arthropods, which is going back to an earlier comment that I had made. And certainly the fire ants and the bees and the wasp are a problem to our students. And there is probably more danger associated with these stinging pests than there are with the common cockroaches and silverfish, because in fact there are individuals in a population of humans that are sensitive to bee stings and to the sting of the fire ant. But again, I think that we need to make sure that in order to protect ourselves from these types of insects, that we don't over-treat the environment with pesticides. In other words, an integrated pest management approach will solve those problems too. But we need to make sure that we're careful that we're taking care of the pest problems the way that they need to be taken care of by using the integrated pest management approach.
Yes,
I think just to sort of add to that, I think one of the things that very often has been the approach in the past is there's a problem with insects and spray everywhere. That'll get rid of the insects. But what integrated pest management seeks to do is to try to identify specific areas within the structure where pests are a problem, and then treat those areas as minimally as possible to deal with the pest. That makes a lot of sound economic sense. You don't want to spend a lot of money on a lot of pesticide if a little does the job. And that by using it in that type of manner, it's most responsible not just in terms of the fiscal responsibility, but also in terms of the environment. You minimize the amount of chemicals used to do the job and do the job right.
We would like to put a caller through now. We have Norman in Dallas. Yes, sir.
Yeah, I work at a hospital in Dallas area, and I was wondering if there was a chance that hospitals would soon come under the jurisdiction of a similar program that the school systems now are under.
The answer to that question is that it's highly likely, particularly in hospitals that receive federal support. There is actually a proposal within Texas, and it's hard to know what the legislature will be doing, but the present IPM provisions may actually be expanded to hospitals and nursing homes, but I guess we'll have to wait until the legislature is done with that.
Thank you very much, Roger and Stuart. That's all the time we have for questions. I think you must have done a very good job of explaining any that they might have had. Thanks to the facts and the caller that we had, this brings us almost to the end of the first half of our program. In just a moment, we'll adjourn for a 10-minute break. But first, we have a brief greeting from the Director of the Texas Agricultural Extension Service, Dr. Zerl Carpenter.
Hello. There are many of you who are familiar faces to us in Extension Service. We've had the privilege of working with you in a variety of family, youth, and community programs, often from our county extension offices or from here at Texas A&M University. In your business, you're probably most familiar with our 4-H and youth development work. That includes our 4-H clubs and our 4-H curriculum enrichment programs. Today, more than 560,000 Texas youth, 65% from cities and suburbs, participate in the learning and service activities of our youth development program. And more than 60,000 adult volunteers contribute their time and personal support. Financial support includes almost $1 million in scholarships awarded annually to Texas youth. We're glad to be of service now in providing the information you need to implement an integrated pest management program. IPM has been a most productive and efficient program for us in agriculture. It's one of the keys to a productive, cost-efficient, and safe agricultural industry. We recommend IPM to you, not just because it's the law, but because it can be your key to a healthy, pest-free school environment. It's been a pleasure to speak with you today. This concludes the first half of today's presentation. The second half will continue after a 10-minute break. In case you would like to stay while you stretch, we have an informational video to tell you a little bit more about the Extension Service. Thank you for joining us, and please convene again in 10 minutes.
Every day, thousands of people from throughout Texas are touched by the work of the Texas Agricultural Extension Service. They attend extension workshops or educational events. They read extension publications or receive expert information, and they volunteer in extension programs. Many more Texans benefit indirectly from the economic, environmental, and societal improvements that result from having extension programs in their communities. Yet, Texans are often unaware of what their Extension Service is and how it operates. Extension is here to educate. The Texas Agricultural Extension Service is a part of the Texas A&M University system. Its mission is to educate Texans for self-improvement, individual action, and community problem solving. Through Extension, Texans have access to outreach education related to agriculture, the environment, to youth and adult life skills, nutrition and health, to leadership development, and to community economic development. Extension is a nationwide educational network. Each state extension service delivers its outreach education in partnership with county and federal government. In Texas, an extension office serves each of the 254 counties in the state. These offices are staffed by one or more professional extension agents, and they're administered through 12 district headquarters. All are linked to the university system, and many are located at university system research and extension centers. This unique system of education was made possible by the Federal Smith-Lever Act of 1914. In 1915, the Texas legislature established the Texas Agricultural Extension Service, and they assigned it to the Texas A&M University system for administration. The system is designated as the land-grant institution of higher education in Texas. State legislation also authorized financial participation by county commissioners' courts in this cooperative effort. Nationally, this partnership among the federal government, the state land-grant universities, and county government is known as the Cooperative Extension System. The heart of the extension education system is its faculty. Extension agents working in county offices teach adults and youth. They provide information. They help individuals and groups solve problems using the educational resources of the university system. County extension agents are in turn supported with training and source materials from extension specialists who are located at Texas A&M University and at the 12 district headquarters. Specialists draw upon university research and the information resources of the U.S. Department of Agriculture to develop their extension educational materials. Extension is often described as a grassroots organization. Local residents in each county work with extension agents to develop plans for educational programs and activities aimed at dealing with critical issues in their communities. These county plans are incorporated into a statewide plan that determines the priorities and allocation of resources within the Extension Service as a whole. In this way, educational programs grow out of local needs. Thousands of volunteers expand Extension's outreach by giving their time to lead adult and youth programs. Extensive cooperative work with other state and community agencies and organizations also enables Extension to most efficiently serve local communities. Extension was a knowledge-based organization long before that became a fashionable information age phrase. For almost 80 years, Texans have called on the Extension Service for current, reliable information and educational services. In the early years, the agency became well known for its work in applying agricultural research to help farmers and ranchers increase productivity, in teaching families self-reliant skills such as food preservation, and for the 4-H program for rural youth. Today, the Texas Agricultural Extension Service is the state's largest provider of non-formal education for adults and youth in Texas. We're still working with farmers and with the entire agribusiness sector, which is our state's second largest industry and the source of almost 20% of the state's jobs. We still teach self-reliance skills too, although those skills now include such things as financial management, parenting skills, elder care, or how to run a home-based business. And our 4-H programs, which now reach more urban than rural youth, engage youngsters in fun learning activities while teaching them about science, responsibility, and leadership. Today, you're just as likely to see extension work going on at an environmental fair held in the city as at a county fair in the country. And you'll find extension addressing significant contemporary issues such as water quality, conservation of natural resources, economic development.
We need to get our administrators from the current comfort level, not to the crisis level, but to say, hey, this is more prudent. This is what we want to be. Because one of our shortcomings was that what we did right here. With occasional pat on the back from somebody, oh, you're doing fine, you know, just stay with it. But it is something that we did because, oh, it was just the pressure of the job and we knew that was the right thing to do. But to ensure success, you need to have proper documentation and start the documentation, not with showing what you're doing, but with this individual is designated as our individual for IPM program, and this individual is licensed, this individual is on medical surveillance program, etc.
Any new program will fail unless the upper administration is solidly behind it.
Hello again and welcome back. Your presence today obviously indicates an interest in upholding both the letter and spirit of the law regarding integrated pest management in schools. To help you plan for optimal results, our next presenter will discuss a program model that incorporates teamwork and training, along with a strong policy commitment. He's Dr. Michael Merchant, an extension urban entomologist from Dallas. Mike, why is a policy statement so important?
Well, that's a good question, Suzanne. Policy statement basically sets the groundwork for an IPM program. there are several good reasons why you should have an IPM statement. First of all, it shows that your district cares about safety. Safety of the children because of pest problems, also safety from pesticide, overuse of pesticide. It sends a message to your staff that you have expectations about how pest control is going to be done from now on. It also provides guidance to your staff about the expectations of how the pesticide work applications and pest control will be done. And finally, the policy is the law of the state of Texas now. Every school district does have to have a policy. Your policies can be very simple or they can be very detailed depending on your management style of the school. Some key elements include that the policy should be an education tool. It should show parents and teachers that might read the policy that there are some health issues involved. The policy should spell some of these out. It should also define what the district means by IPM, because for many people, IPM is a new concept, a new term, and the policy gives you an opportunity to detail what the district's definition of IPM is. It also should declare the district's specific commitments to IPM implementation. Some of these specific commitments would include the commitment to educate all staff about sanitation, maintenance requirement needs, and how that fits into an IPM program. It should show you the commitment to ensure that all contracts and bid specifications are conforming to IPM principles. It should also specifically spell out the commitment to incorporate IPM into new building design, landscape design, choosing of the proper plants and design of the landscapes. It should also spell out your commitment to gaining the cooperation among the staff to work with the IPM coordinator. This policy sends a message to all the people in the school district that it's very important for them to work with their IPM coordinator. And finally, it should show the commitment to comply with all the regulations in the state, both state and federal regulations that have to do with pesticide use in schools. Another key component of the IPM requirement is that all schools have IPM coordinators. Their coordinators have 3 general areas of responsibility, including supervision responsibility. These include the importance of the coordinator being able to communicate well with his staff about problems, sanitation needs, and building maintenance requirements, training of staff, especially those that will be doing pest management, monitoring pest problems, and applying pest control tactics, and ensuring that all staff that use pesticides are licensed. In addition to the supervisory responsibilities, there are important operations responsibilities for pest control coordinators. This includes the use of approving the pesticides for use in applications, for maintaining a list of facility needs that would be a priority for the maintenance department to work on, and working with contractors. The IPM coordinator will find this to be a very large portion of his job if the school district heavily relies on contractors. Also, the IPM coordinator will be responsible for authorizing emergency treatments if pest problems require quicker activity than the 48-hour waiting period. And the coordinator is responsible for maintaining records, ordering and maintaining equipment and supplies, and ensuring that pesticide storage is done safely. The coordinator also has a series of educational roles to follow. He's responsible for developing educational and informational programs for the staff, winning the cooperation of the staff, sort of like a captain leading a crew. The coordinator really has to be able to get the staff to buy into the IPM program. He's responsible for making sure that all notification is done appropriately and at the right time. And he's responsible for reporting to the administration. So as you can see from all of these responsibilities, the IPM coordinator position is actually a very responsible one. It's going to require a person that's capable of communicating well with people. Different school districts may choose different people to serve in a coordinator role. Very oftentimes the coordinator will be part of the district management team, someone in the higher administration for the district. Assistant superintendents may serve as coordinators in some districts. Some districts that do a lot of contracting out of their IPM work may choose to use their bidding officer or contracts officer because that person is very familiar with the process of bidding for pest control work. it may be the head of the maintenance department. It may be a new person. For some school districts, it may be utilizing an existing person. But whatever the person's role, every person that's chosen, it's imperative that this person is someone that knows how to gain cooperation, because without cooperation, you really don't have a very good IPM program. After you've decided on the IPM coordinator, the next big decision that the school district has to make is whether and how much of the work that they perform will be contracted out versus done in-house. The answer to this question will vary from district to district. There are some advantages of using outside contractors. First of all, it avoids the need to train the staff in pesticide use and pest identification and all the various levels of information that are important for IPM. Also, by using an outside contractor, that contractor assumes liability for pesticide applications and use. The contractor generally has more experience because of a number of years in the business. A contractor may be doing a particular pest problem once a month or once a week, whereas a school district may have to deal with a specialized problem only once every few years. So that wealth of experience that a contractor can bring in can be very significant. It avoids the need for staff overtime, because all these pesticide applications now have to be done after hours, either after school ends in the evening or on weekends. So this might be a consideration for some districts. Also, it avoids the need to have to, for the school to have to purchase and store pesticides on site. Now, on the other hand, there are some advantages of using in-house personnel. First of all, the school district has a higher level of control over the work that's done. People that are directly under your supervision are easier to manage. You avoid the bidding process. You avoid having to let out bids and choose contractors and be sure that the bid specifications are done correctly. It avoids the use, it allows you to have a shorter response time to problems. If you have in-house staff, you just simply get that staff person out immediately, and the problem can be, you can start dealing with it immediately. Work can be incorporated into other activities, such as you've got people out mowing lawns on a weekend. That person can then maybe treat fire ant mounds as they're out mowing lawns in a turf grass area. And for some school districts, in-house personnel can actually be more economical. It's up to the school district to decide really what the best combination of mixture of using in-house versus contracted personnel. And most school districts, in fact, do use a mixture of in-house and outside contractors. A recent study done at Texas A&M has shown that we know now that in the state of Texas, about 75% of schools use contractors for general pest control. This is pest control in structures and buildings. Another 77% of schools use in-house personnel for landscape work. So schools are opting generally at the current time to use both outside contractors and in-house personnel for doing pest control work. Should you decide to contract out your pest control work, the biggest challenge really is selecting a contractor and communicating well with that contractor what your expectations are with regard to pest management. One solution of making your expectations very clear would be to develop a set of clear bid specifications. Bid specifications that really spell out very clearly to the company what you expect as far as an IPM program goes. Now, there's not enough time to really go into detail of what should be in the bid specifications. Very frequently, schools find that the biggest problem is that the lowest bidder gets the job, and because of this, lowest bidder, you may not get the quality of work that you desire. Schools may want to consider using an evaluation matrix to base their decisions about whether a contractor gets the bid. Some of the considerations about whether you would get a particular company to be the successful bidder on a job might be the company's familiarity with IPM, the experience of its technicians, the number of years that company has been in business, the time requirement estimates that are given by the company when they come out and estimate the job. Are they realistic? their ability to respond to emergencies. If there is an emergency on the school, does the company have the ability to respond quickly? Previous experience with working in schools can be a criteria for judging a bid. Also, the references and reputation of the company. Price should be certainly be a consideration in choosing a bid, but many schools are actually creating a bid matrix where they can use all these criteria and in an objective manner to choose their successful bidder on pest control work. Look very carefully at price when you're considering a pest control bid. In general, you should consider that most pest control companies are going to require about $1 per hour for work on a pest control site. Based on the bids that you're receiving, is that a realistic bid? If you're given a bid of $15 a month and you've got 5 hours worth of work to do that month, at a very minimum, that bid obviously would not be a very realistic one, and you would want to look very closely at that company before accepting it. Just a couple of other tips is that your bid specifications should spell out very quickly whether you use monitoring technique, what kind of monitoring techniques should be used, your requirement for use of least toxic insecticides, and you should always make a walkthrough of the sites mandatory for any bid contractor before they submit a bid. They ought to know very clearly what's going to be required for them to do if they successfully bid for the job. Be prepared to work closely with your contractor. Their ability to do IPM is linked very closely with your ability and desire to cooperate with them. Those sanitation reports that are received on a monthly basis are extremely important, and the school has to take those very seriously. As Mr. Mathis indicated earlier, pesticide selection and approval is one aspect of doing pest management that will change under the new laws. Under the new law, we can use all pesticides currently in the schools. There's no limitation about what can be used. However, under the new IPM program, some justification is required for products that are slightly more hazardous than others. The Structural Pest Control Board now requires that all pesticides be classified into one of three lists: a green list, a yellow list, and a red list. The green list products were selected because they're specifically less toxic than anything else. The green list will include products such as borates, silica gel dust, insect growth regulators, which have a very low toxicity, the use of baits, which are either containerized or placed in a crack and crevice application, the use of microbial and fungal insecticides, and the use of botanicals or plant-derived insecticides. All of these products, in addition, must have a caution label on the front of the package. Green list products are used at the discretion of any licensed applicator. In other words, there is no special paperwork required to use a green list product. The yellow list product is the next category of insecticides. These are products with a caution signal word on the front of the label. These are products that, just like the green list, have a caution word, but they're not on the green list because they don't fall into one of the previous categories. Yellow list products can only be used after written approval has been given by the certified applicator. This can be the outside contractor. It might be a certified applicator on the staff. That written approval is then good for 3 months or 3 applications after it's made. Now, the red list products consist of all remaining EPA-registered products with warning or danger signal words. Red list products require written approval by a certified applicator and the IPM coordinator. A copy of the form that's signed by both of these people must be sent to the Structural Pest Control Board. Again, red list products approval then is good for 3 months or 3 applications. There's a simple way to tell red list products from yellow and green list products, and that's by looking at the label of the product, the caution warning or dangerous signal word. These products over here all have signal words prominent on their label. If you look very closely at the front of a pesticide product, you'll see the signal word very prominently displayed. This caution signal word means that the product will fall into either the yellow or the green list. Now, this one happens to be a green list product because it's a containerized bait. But you may also have products over here like this Demon WP product that has a warning signal word. Warning and danger signal words, as you see on the product below it, are indicators of products that are classified as red list products. And these are the ones that require the most stringent application guidelines. This brings us to a final yet very important component of IPM, and that's education. If we think about all the different components of IPM as pieces of a puzzle, the puzzle's certainly not complete without considering education. Education is something that has to be done from the lowest level, I guess you'd say, of students, all the way up through the teachers, the staff, the kitchen personnel, everybody that has anything to do with the IPM program. Without education of all school staff, IPM is destined to fall short of its promise in the schools. We now have a short video clip from several schools who are trying IPM and who have discovered for themselves the importance of education to an IPM program.
Dallas Public Schools is the second largest school district in the state of Texas, and it's complicated by the fact that we have a lot of departments and a lot of individuals that we have to pull together to make this team. And by being a part of this team, I feel very much encouraged that we have learned how to do IPM, and we probably have learned some concepts that will help us for as management of other programs will be in the future.
Used to, you'd have to go through a lot of channels to get anything done. If we got a serious problem, or I feel like it's going to cause a serious problem, I pick up the phone and I call the man that's in charge of that area, and they get out immediately and take care of it. Used to, you had to go all through channels.
What's made that change? Why has that change come about?
Well, because we had meetings and talked about the IPM program, and we would all have to cooperate and work together in order for it to work. And everybody has been cooperative about it.
The biggest hurdle is the education of the individual parties as each one of them learns their roles and what the result of failure to meet these roles, what the impact can be on the program. But that's probably the biggest challenge is the continuing education of all the individuals and their key needs. It is not a one-person program.
Now, Mike, you've been talking about the overall training. There's also the specific training for IPM coordinators.
Yes, Suzanne. Obviously, we can't go into all the depth that we need to go today. One of the tools that we are in the process of developing right now is a workbook that will be designed specifically for IPM coordinators to get their certified training from the Structural Pest Control Board. This workbook will include a lot of the things that we've discussed today, including a model policy statement, model bid specifications, and just example bid specifications that you may choose to use for your school, special forms that can be used for approving pesticide applications, and information about licensing requirements. We hope to have a lot of good stuff in this workbook.
How would they obtain that?
Okay, persons wishing to reserve their own copy can send their check or money order to the address listed on the screen here. The workbook will not be available immediately, but will be available after the April teleconference, April 5th teleconference. The Structural Pest Control Board is currently reviewing the contents of this production and the accompanying materials, and we hope to have a certification form for IPM coordinators that will certify that they've received the training that's been provided by the manual and the satellite conferences that will be acceptable to the board for the required training for IPM coordinators.
When you mention certification, is that something that actually has to be filed with the structural board or just kept on record?
No, the form that will be available eventually will be something that the schools will keep on file themselves at their own site. So it's not you don't have to send anything in, but there does require to be written verification that the school coordinator has done the right training.
And that will be enclosed in the manual?
That will be enclosed
or even
in the
a
manual.
letter of their own writing to document that. Now, you mentioned the April 5th program. Where will that be and what's it about?
Okay, the April 5th program will be held at the downlink sites as shown on the screen here. It will also be available to be downlinked by anybody that has a satellite dish and capabilities of picking up the satellite conferences. We certainly hope that everybody will attend, and we hope that if you've attended the first conference, you might be able to persuade even some other people involved with pest control in schools to attend.
Well, thank you, Mike, and we'll continue with you in just a moment. Obviously, a lack of staff training would affect IPM's effectiveness. The consequence might be more difficult pest problems, but there also could be legal consequences. To help inform you further about such risks, we have once again Mr. Benny Mathis, Executive Director of the Structural Pest Control Board. Benny?
Thank you, Suzanne. The Structural Pest Control Board has worked up the integrated pest management regulations. There could also be some actions taken by the agency if the school districts refuse to take in the integrated pest management plan. We hope that doesn't happen. Integrated pest management in this area is just good, sound pest control, good, excellent knowledge for people to be working with. We're looking for voluntary compliance in those areas. To establish an integrated pest management plan for each school, you'll need to develop your official IPM policy, designate your pest management roles, the IPM coordinator, educate and train. Look at those pest management objectives of inspection, identification, monitoring, setting those action thresholds, and take in all the IPM strategies. We would hope that this would be a voluntary process, and we can phase these in after each school district has the opportunity before September 1st of 1995 to come up with an official integrated pest management policy. We will be doing this by sending out these manuals sometime in the next 60 days. That is the basics, and it's a coordination of EPA and Texas's plan. This will give people the opportunity to see the integrated pest management plan and also the regulations. Suzanne, that just about sums up our position on this. It'll need to be phased in. We're looking for voluntary compliance at the moment, and we'll be working towards those ends.
Just for the record, what would be the consequences of non-compliance? Is there a fine?
The Structural Pest Control Board is given the authority by the legislature of Texas to give a fine of up to $5,000 a day for non-compliance, yes.
And how will you be determining potential violations?
Well, we're going to be looking at the school systems. We'll be visiting the school systems as we possibly can, and first checking for their policy and their integrated pest management coordinator, and helping them to work towards meeting these regulations.
Mm-hmm. And we want to remind everyone we're welcome to have calls right now, but we do have some questions that have been received by fax and from our studio audience here. And Benny, one of those questions is whether or not this law applies to other than public schools.
When the legislature enacted this law in 1991, they made it very specific to the public schools. But it's good sound pest control. It's what we need to be using in our private schools also. I would think that the private schools should embrace this integrated pest management plan.
Mm-hmm. There seems to still be some confusion about who can be an IPM coordinator. Could you talk about that?
Well, I think, Suzanne, I think originally we had hoped that the IPM coordinator would be someone with some responsibility in the school district, someone who has the ability to communicate well with other members of the administration staff, and to be fairly responsible, because it is a pretty responsible position. There was some discussion about whether this person ought to be a licensed applicator, and the decision was made that really it would be nice to have that person be a licensed applicator, but it's not absolutely essential. It's important that the coordinator have the understanding of IPM and the understanding of the coordinator's role. But we believe that anybody that can get that overall broad picture and take the time to study the training materials can do a very good job as IPM coordinator.
Can the coordinator be the non-commercial applicator, though, if there's one on staff? Benny?
The non-commercial applicator, as long as they're an employee of the school, could also be the IPM coordinator, yes. The key factor there is that the commercial applicator, the one that would be contracting those services, could not be. And the reason for that is as Mike explained, you need to have someone that's close to the school system, someone that can make things happen in the school system to be the IPM coordinator. A commercial contractor may or may not be able to do this.
And we do have a call now from Robert. Yes, sir.
Mr. Merchant, I have a question for you on the pricing program you was recommending for as $1 per hour. Regulating that, I was curious if you had maybe made a mistake in that.
Oh, yes. If I said $1 per hour, I did make a mistake. I meant $1 per minute, and that's just that's a very broad, I guess, generalization about the cost of doing business as a pest control operator. If you have an hour's worth of work to do, and on a monthly basis, and that it's going to cost you, you're charging $60 an hour or somewhere in that vicinity, that's probably a pretty good realistic estimate of what the job should cost. I didn't mean $1 per hour, but $1 per minute.
That would be the old days, wouldn't it?
That would be the old days.
All right, we do have a call from Dan now. Yes, Dan.
Concerning the IPM plan and IPM policy. I understand we have to have an IPM policy or plan by September 1 of '95. Could you explain to me the difference between IPM plan and IPM policy, or are these one and the same? Thank you.
I guess you'd be talking about the same thing. We generally talk about the policy as being a written statement that the school district puts together that outlines exactly what the expectations are and what the school is committing itself to do. The plan might be something a little more detailed. It may be some of the more technical aspects, but what the law states is that an actual written policy has to be on file by September 1.
Benny, any comment on that?
Yes, I think that whenever we talk about IPM policy and we talk about plan, we're actually talking about two different things. The policy would be the school district's policy on this. The plan would be the implementation of bringing in all of the IPM strategies into this. And this is where I was talking earlier about phasing in. You'll be phasing in the caulking and the maintenance things that need to be done. And that is different from the actual policy. The policy could just would start out with designating those pest management roles and taking in integrated pest management strategies along with other things. And the plan's going to be a lot more complicated, yes.
As far as bidding out, are there standardized bids that are available or even required, or do the schools develop that on their own? Mike?
There's really been no requirement. There's no standard bid specifications that are required. The school can be as creative as they like with that. The structural board is suggesting that the bid specifications be very clear so that the school can be assured that whoever's doing their contract work understands what the state requires as far as IPM in a school.
Betty, there was another question returning to the issue of who can be an IPM coordinator. And that question was whether or not a commercial contractor can be hired as an employee, even for one day a month.
That would depend upon the school system, but the effect of the law, and it is that the IPM coordinator be an employee of the school. And that's the way that the board decided that should be, and that's based on the fact that someone at the school system needs to have authority, and the IPM coordinator needs to have some authority there, and not just a contracted person that may not have that authority at school. Yes, an employee of the school. But it could also be their non-commercial applicator.
But if it was a person who had a business in addition to their employment, would there be a conflict of interest there if any contracting went to their company?
That would be something that we would want to look at in that area. The commercial applicator could also be a non-commercial applicator. We have that system set up. That would be something that someone might want to take advantage of, yes.
It sounds like a situation for caution.
Very good. Yes, ma'am.
We do have a call now from Jim. Yes, Jim. Go right ahead. All right, we might have lost him. What is a level of pest population that's tolerable? And that's an indication of whether or not you have a good program, whether or not you need to use pesticides?
That's a good question, Suzanne, because as has been mentioned by several of the other speakers, IPM is based on the idea of having tolerable levels of pest. That may vary from one school to another. An old building that's had a history of cockroach infestations, for example, tolerance may be finding 1 roach a week on a sticky card. That may be an acceptable level of control. For a brand new school, 0 cockroaches may be the only acceptable level of control. The same thing with outdoor pests. There's all sorts of considerations to a site that might determine acceptable pest density. So it's something that the school is just going to have to work out on their own based on their own experience and their expectations for what should be taking place in the school facilities.
All right, well, we do have Jim back. What's your question, Jim?
My question is, will schools have a simplified plan or policy that they may use when we're using many of our employees to do lots of different things, or will we have to develop from scratch?
All right, any reaction to whether or not the employee having other duties affects the need for a plan?
Well, Suzanne, I think in the EPA manual and the manual that we have put our regulations into, it's going to give them some basic knowledge of where to go in those areas and how to set up a plan. These manuals will be mailed out sometime in the next 60 days, and once they read those manuals, they'll have a better understanding of how to develop this, I believe.
Mike, do you have any reaction to that? I might not have understood the question completely.
I'm not sure I quite caught it either, but I think that certainly employees don't have to be dedicated to doing only pest control work. I think that it would be nice if you have a large enough school district to have somebody devoted to strictly pest control work, but no, it's something hopefully will be integratable very, very easily with other functions that are taking place on the school.
We're going to take one final call, and that one will be from Marvin. Yes.
We're wondering if an IPM coordinator is required for each campus within one school district, or can one IPM coordinator cover all the campuses in an individual school district?
Benny, why don't you take that one?
The way the regulation is set up is that each school district has to have at least one IPM coordinator, but there could be many others. And I think that in an ideal situation, in a large school district, you could have coordinators at different campuses to report to one IPM coordinator. In some of your smaller campuses, you may just want to have one person, or some of the small school districts, you just have one person responsible.
Okay. Let's go ahead and take one more. I've been told we have a little bit of time for Gus's question. Yes, Gus.
You know, growth regulators I'm sorry. On your green list, you have growth regulators. But then you say that, you know, everything that doesn't have a warning, caution label is on the red list. Okay, some of the growth regulators have caution, some have warning. That might be confusion to some of the coordinators.
I think there's two things that need to be clarified there. There are plant growth regulators and there are insect growth regulators. The regulations specifically talk about insect growth regulators as being on the green list. Now, if you have an insect growth regulator that does not have a caution label, that automatically puts it into a red list type product.
That actually is the end of our time. And Benny, some of these interpretive questions about the regulations, should they come to the structural board?
Yes, they should. If they're about the regulations themselves, please address those questions to the Structural Pest Control Board.
Thank you very much, Benny, Mike, and to our callers, but appreciate you fielding those questions. We've covered a wide range of information, so before we conclude our program, we want to help you focus on where to start, starting now. Roger Gold rejoins us to give some final advice. Roger?
I think the first thing, Suzanne, is that people need to understand that this is the law in Texas. That at the present time, that September 1st is the kickoff date, and that is the law, and that we need to come into compliance. So we need to make a decision that, in fact, that we'll come into compliance at least at the minimal level and possibly more with the spirit of the law. As we move to the visuals, I think that we have a summary of some things that will help us as we look at this. I would suggest to you that, first of all, that you secure a copy of the legislation and or the rules and regulations from the board. As indicated, they'll be available to you in the next few weeks, and make sure that you understand what the legislation calls for, and in fact, that you understand how to come in compliance with that. The next point is to appoint an IPM coordinator. Some school districts have already accomplished that. Others need to give some thoughts to who that individual might be, keeping in mind again that the intent of the law is that that IPM coordinator be an employee of the school district. The second thing that you need to be aware of is the IPM coordinator needs to be trained. And in fact, that training will be available in the near future. We then need to develop the IPM policy and plan that's been receiving a lot of attention in our discussions here this morning. That IPM policy will be available in a draft form that you'll be able to basically fill in the blanks. And the plan will involve much more in terms of the approaches that will be taken in the IPM program by the individual school districts. That's where the IPM coordinator will be dealing with his personnel, his or her personnel. Next, I think it's important to establish a record-keeping system. Certainly in the days of computers and so forth, this can be easily done. But records need to be kept of all of the application of pesticides that are made in the schools. That's just a good idea in terms of documentation. We need to understand that all personnel involved in pest control will be supervised. And that, again, will be the role of the pesticide coordinator in most of the school districts. When it comes to using outside bidders or outside companies to do the work in IPM, you need to understand that there need to be specific bid specifications. In other words, just because you're contracting the work, that does not exempt them from the provisions of using IPM approaches. Again, it's important to understand that the cost of implementing this work may actually increase. And so make sure that what you're getting for the dollars that are being expended. And I guess lastly in this section, and that is to actually implement the IPM plan. As we can see on the next visual, there are some approaches that need to be taken. Once you've developed the policy statement, and once you understand what the roles are going to be of personnel, and they have been designated, then we need to set the pest management objectives. Now, Dr. Merchant talked about those. Each school district has the opportunity of setting the objectives for that school district. The thing that I would try to remind you of is the safety and the health of the students and the people working in the school that's important here. In other words, the objectives need to be realistic and provide for their health and safety. Oftentimes, the approaches that will be taken in the IPM program itself will involve inspections, identification, and monitoring of the pest populations. I think a good place to start is to go through the schools now with the IPM coordinator and determine what the present problems are and where those problems occur. The next area is to set an action threshold. In other words, at what level of infestation will an action be taken? I'd like to remind those that are listening this morning that you're dealing actually with more than one state agency when it comes to action thresholds. You're dealing with the State Structural Pest Control Board in terms of the IPM program itself, but many of you will actually be dealing with the Department of Health when it comes to cockroaches and other insects in the cafeteria and kitchen areas. So understand the responsibilities in terms of meeting these provisions as well. Apply the IPM strategies, emphasizing again sanitation, mechanical and physical controls, and other approaches, and when needed, the use of pesticides. The IPM program is straightforward, but it must be implemented. Remember, it's the law.
Thank you, Roger, for that wrap-up. We have received some questions by fax, and so we have those phone numbers. We'll try and give you a call back. For IPM coordinators, remember, pending structural board approval, viewing this program and the April 5th program, plus studying the Extension IPM in Schools manual, will meet the training required by state law for IPM coordinators. The satellite conferences also may be viewed on videotape. If you don't have access to a local recording of these conferences, you may order the videotapes from the Extension Service. Both the videotapes and the IPM in Schools manual will be available from the Extension Service after the April 5th program. For your convenience, ordering information will follow the closing credits. Also after the credits is a listing of the April 5th downlink sites once again. That program, starting at 10 a.m., will focus in depth on the actual practice of integrated pest management, the methods of inspection, prevention, and treatment, as well as record keeping, pesticide safety, and other practical aspects of IPM. We hope that IPM coordinators and various operations staff will be encouraged to attend. And we hope you've found this program informative and helpful in formulating your thoughts about how to proceed with integrated pest management. Thanks for your time, your participation, and the great work you do for our kids.